The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. He was somehow able to squeeze Colbert out of CBS. Then he turned his sights on me, and now he's openly rooting for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and the hundreds of Americans who work for their shows who don't make...
Something bizarre is unfolding in American politics, and it's not a parody, even though it feels like one. The President of the United States, once the self-proclaimed champion of free speech, is now the loudest critic of comedians who dare mock him. His latest target? Jimmy Kimmel, the late-night host whose jokes suddenly turned into national threats. What began as a routine roast spiraled into a public meltdown, with Trump and his loyal Lieutenant JD Vance acting less like politicians and more like wounded performers desperate for applause. What's shocking isn't the criticism, it's the open attempt to silence satire. When leaders start fearing laughter more than opposition, that's not confidence, that's collapse disguised as control. And America is watching it unfold in real time.
Said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him, terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible.
Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
I didn't know you meant that, Donald Trump.
Kimmel didn't plan to become the face of resistance, but Trump practically handed him the crown. After forcing Stephen Colbert off CBS and aiming his outrage at Fallon and Meyers, Trump's obsession turned toward Kimmel, calling for NBC to fire the failing host. But here's what his supporters don't realize. The more he attacks comedians, the louder the laughter gets. Kimmel's response wasn't rage, it was precision comedy that stripped Trump's armor in seconds. Each joke landed like a headline, clean, factual, humiliating. Vance, meanwhile, hovered beside him, echoing every phrase, every grievance, like a backup dancer at a bad concert. It's a spectacle so absurd it feels scripted, except this time, the punchlines write themselves.
Tylenol. It's been overwhelming. I've heard from a lot of people over the last 6 days. I've heard from all the people in the world over the last 6 days. Everyone I have ever met has reached out 10 or 11 times. Weird characters from my past. The guy who fired me from my first radio job in Seattle, where we are not airing tonight, by the way, sorry, Seattle. His name is Larry. In 1989, Larry tried to force me to do a bit called Jokes for Donuts, where people would call in with a joke and I would give them donuts. I refused to do it, and then I made a lot of fun of Larry for suggesting it, and eventually Larry fired me, and I had to move back in with my parents. But even he wrote in to cheer me up. Thank you, Larry, and I want to thank everyone who checked in. It would take all week to list all of them, but some that I do especially want to mention are my fellow late-night talk show hosts, my friend Stephen Colbert, who's found himself in this predicament, my friends Jon Stewart, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, John Oliver, Conan O'Brien, James Corden, Arsenio, Kathy, Wanda, Chelsea, even Jay reached out.
The deeper irony lies in Trump's self-image. He still imagines himself as the titan of success, the billionaire mogul, the deal-maker, the kingmaker. Yet, Kimmel doesn't exaggerate. He exposes. Every lawsuit, every failed venture, every desperate attempt to rewrite history is played back with surgical accuracy. The mogul who couldn't keep casinos alive now lectures America about prosperity. The man who claimed to drain the swamp is neck-deep in it, with JD Vance clapping in the background like a student repeating lines he doesn't understand. It's tragic theater disguised as leadership, where power looks less like dominance and more like a nervous audition. And the audience? They're not applauding. They're stunned into disbelief.
Sometimes I wonder, in what world is the Vice President of the United States calling into a giant-toothed podcast host to badmouth me and the people who watch this show?
There are these judges. Judge Boasberg comes to mind. Lots of judges who are trying to basically say the president can't exercise the powers of the presidency. You're an attorney. How do you assess the legal battles here?
Yeah, I bet all those judges are huge fans of Jimmy Kimmel, by the way. But I think, Vince, that one, we have an appeals process.
But the story isn't just about a late-night feud. It's about what happens when humor becomes a threat to power. For decades, America celebrated satire as the ultimate safeguard of democracy, from Johnny Carson to Jon Stewart. Now we're witnessing a sitting president and his allies treating it like a criminal act. Trump's hand-picked enforcer, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, even echoed the rhetoric, suggesting that Kimmel's mockery was somehow un-American. The hypocrisy is staggering. The same people who once defended free speech now want to license it. When laughter is censored, it's not comedy that dies. It's freedom. Kimmel's monologue didn't just entertain. It exposed how fragile the powerful have become when faced with nothing but truth and timing.
Our freedom to speak is what they admire most about this country. And that's something I'm embarrassed to say I took for granted until they pulled my friend Steven off the air and tried to coerce the affiliates who run our show in the cities that you live in to take my show off the air. That's not legal. That's not American. That is un-American, and it is so dangerous.
JD Vance's transformation is another dark twist in this saga. Once the working-class hero who warned against political manipulation, he's now the front-row cheerleader for the very show he used to criticize. His shift from Trump skeptic to Trump echo isn't strategy, it's surrender. The man who once claimed to speak for the forgotten now spends his career flattering the one who forgot them first. And Kimmel knows it. Every time he mocks Vance, it's not personal, it's poetic. The satire doesn't invent hypocrisy, it just shines a light on it. Watching Vance repeat Trump's talking points is like seeing a ventriloquist's dummy pretend to breathe. It's disturbing, pathetic, and painfully revealing. A political horror comedy that writes itself.
Stop that. Look, it's just me, Jimmy, the chairman of the FCC, gently suggesting that you gently shut the up.
But you can't say that. That's a violation of free speech.
Oh, yeah, about that. Speech, it ain't free no more.
What? It's not free no more?
Yeah, we're charging by the word now.
You're charging by the word? How much are you charging?
Depends on what you want to say. Like, you want to say something nice about the president's beautiful, thick yellow hair, or how he can do his makeup better than any broad. That's free.
Trump's obsession with control has reached almost cinematic levels of absurdity. Instead of leading a nation, he's directing a performance, and the stage lights are blinding. Each insult he hurls, each rant he unleashes, feels less like political discourse and more like a man auditioning for relevance. When he claims comedians should be punished, it doesn't sound like strength. It sounds like fear disguised as authority. And fear is contagious. JD Vance, once a voice of reason, now mirrors Trump's tantrums with uncanny precision, nodding along like a nervous understudy terrified of missing his cue. The irony? The more they rage, the more their act unravels. The tough guys of American politics are now punchlines in a comedy they accidentally wrote themselves.
To being a direct violation of the First Amendment is not a particularly intelligent threat to make in public. Ted Cruz said he sounded like a mafioso. Although, I don't know, if you want to hear a mob boss make a threat like that, you have to hide a microphone in a deli and park outside in a van with a tape recorder all night long. This genius said it on a podcast. Brendan Carr is the most embarrassing car Republicans have embraced since this.
In Kimmel's monologues, the power dynamic flips completely. Trump and Vance want to dictate the narrative, but Kimmel controls the frame. Every time Trump speaks, Kimmel turns it into satire. And every time Vance defends him, it becomes parody. It's political jujitsu through humor, and it's devastatingly effective. Kimmel doesn't have to exaggerate. He just has to replay their own words. When the president cries fake news, Kimmel responds with facts wrapped in laughter, and the audience sees through the illusion instantly. This is where the real threat lies for Trump. Not in journalists, not in rivals, but in a comedian who can turn his entire persona into a meme. For a man built on image, that's a fate worse than defeat.
How long you worked here?
A year?
Okay. Donut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which donut, though?
Just whatever makes sense. No pickles. Hold the pickles.
Oh, well, no, I can get that for you.
JD Vance's downfall isn't measured in polls. It's measured in lost integrity. The author who once warned about cultural rot now embodies it. Every public appearance beside Trump looks like a moral surrender, another scene in a tragic comedy he swore he'd never join. Kimmel seizes that contrast masterfully. The man who claimed to fight for truth now parrots whatever line earns him a pat on the head. It's almost Shakespearean in its irony, the hero-turned henchman trapped in a story he can't rewrite. The laughter that follows isn't cheap, it's cathartic. Because deep down, people recognize what they're seeing isn't comedy anymore. It's the sound of power exposing its own weakness, disguised behind applause that doesn't belong to it.
There's a tradition of meddling where they shouldn't under many administrations, but it wasn't always like this. There was an FCC commissioner back in 2022 who worked under Joe Biden who was spot on. He wrote, "President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship." You know who wrote that? FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr.
What makes this entire saga haunting is how close it brushes against authoritarian theater. Trump doesn't just attack comedians, he tries to erase them. When reports emerged that he allegedly pressured networks to drop Kimmel's show, it stopped being entertainment and started sounding like censorship. The same man who promised to protect freedom now treats free speech as a privilege he can revoke. And Vance? He nods along, defending the indefensible with the conviction of a man who's forgotten what he used to believe. The hypocrisy is suffocating. They're not fighting to preserve America's values. They're fighting to preserve their image. And in that pursuit, they've become what satire exists to destroy, symbols of insecurity masquerading as strength.
Hi, I'm Ohio Senator JD Vance. The mainstream media, they want you to think that I'm weird. They call me creepy, cringy, awkward, that I give people something called the ick. They want you to think that I can't order a simple donut.
The brilliance of Kimmel's response lies in its restraint. He doesn't scream, threaten, or insult. He simply reflects. When Trump boasts about his business empire, Kimmel reminds viewers of the bankrupt casinos. When Vance praises Trump's strength, Kimmel plays back his old interviews calling Trump dangerous. It's a mirror so clear that even denial can't fog it. That's what rattles them most. The laughter isn't rebellion, it's revelation. Trump can shout over journalists, but he can't silence irony. Every punchline Kimmel delivers turns propaganda into self-inflicted humiliation. It's not just comedy, it's justice through ridicule. And in that laughter, America rediscovers a truth it almost forgot. Dictators fear jokes because jokes expose what power hides.
Was appointed chairman of the FCC by this former crusader for free speech.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple. Just like dominoes, one by one, they'll go down.
That was also in 2022. And I wonder, how did that guy turn into this guy?
Who would you like to see replace Kimmel on late night?
A lot of people, anybody could replace him. The guy had no talent. Kimmel look, he was fired, he had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent. And more importantly than talent, he had no, because a lot of people have no talent.
What Kimmel exposes isn't just hypocrisy, it's fragility. Every outburst, every demand for loyalty, every threat to silence critics stems from one thing: insecurity. Trump's empire has always been built on performance, not permanence. When that illusion cracks, rage becomes his only defense. And JD Vance, once a student of broken systems, now sits beside him pretending the cracks aren't there. But Kimmel doesn't let them hide. He dissects their words like a surgeon revealing the infection underneath. Each clip, each quote, each joke cuts deeper, until what's left isn't humor, it's truth in disguise. Because when the powerful start fearing laughter, it means they've already lost control of the story. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
I don't agree with many of those people on most subjects. Some of the things they say even make me want to throw up. It takes courage for them to speak out against this administration, and they did, and they deserve credit for it, and thanks. For telling their followers that our government cannot be allowed to control what we do and do not say on television, and that we have to stand up to it. I've been hearing a lot about what I need to say and do tonight, and the truth is, I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about change.
As Trump rants about censorship, Kimmel quietly proves the opposite. Free speech isn't dying, it's fighting back. The louder Trump tries to suppress it, the louder satire responds. And America, once numb to outrage, suddenly starts paying attention again. The audience realizes that the so-called attack on Kimmel isn't about jokes at all. It's about narrative control. If humor can make people question power, then humor becomes the ultimate rebellion. Vance, caught between loyalty and logic, doubles down, turning himself into the perfect metaphor, a man defending a joke he no longer understands. It's tragic, it's absurd, and it's unforgettable, because nothing reveals a weak empire faster than the sound of its king demanding silence.
I mean, seriously, if that guy walked into your office and told you he was there to start making cuts.
I have friends who met a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, who met the best man at their wedding at Turning Points USA because it was an organization of patriots dedicated to making this country the very best country that it could be.
Kimmel's genius lies in how he uses laughter as a weapon of truth. He doesn't need scandals or secret tapes. The comedy does the heavy lifting. Trump brags about being the most successful man alive, and Kimmel simply plays the footage of his failures. Vance praises his mentor's courage, and Kimmel cuts to clips of Trump dodging responsibility. It's not exaggeration, it's exposure, and that's why it stings. Every segment becomes a masterclass in accountability disguised as entertainment. The late-night stage turns into a courtroom, and every punchline is a verdict. By the end, it's clear. The laughter isn't aimed to entertain. It's aimed to remind America what happens when ego becomes policy and satire becomes the last honest voice left.
To talk to the chairman of the FCC.
You don't need to know my name, and I am the new chairman of the FCC.
You were appointed FCC chairman by Donald Trump?
Sir Trump, yes. I used to do some work for the man here and there in Atlantic City.
But did I just hear you on the phone threatening Whoopi Goldberg?
No, I would never threaten Miss Goldstein. I was just teaching her a lesson about consequences.
No, well, pardon me for saying so, maybe you're the wrong guy to talk to, but it seems like the FCC is using mob tactics to suppress free speech.
What did you just...
But the deeper story here isn't just about Trump or Kimmel. It's about how fragile democracy becomes when comedy needs defending. The idea that a president could threaten a network over jokes should terrify every citizen who values freedom. Yet instead of fear, Kimmel answers with wit. He transforms political intimidation into a televised resistance, showing millions that laughter still works as protest. Meanwhile, Vance continues his tragic descent, mistaking servitude for strategy. Together, they stand as symbols of how far power will go to avoid reflection. And Kimmel? He just holds up the mirror, steady, sharp, and merciless. The reflection staring back isn't funny. It's the portrait of a movement unraveling under its own delusion. Paragraph 15. In the end, Trump and Vance wanted to erase a comedian. Instead, they amplified him. Their attacks didn't silence Kimmel. They immortalized his message. Because when the most powerful man in the world feels threatened by a joke, the joke becomes history. Kimmel didn't just win a feud, he exposed an era, one where ego eclipsed truth and laughter became the last defense of sanity. As the applause fades, the message remains. Power that fears parody isn't power, it's panic. And maybe that's the real ending here. Not the collapse of comedy, but the rebirth of accountability. The laughter continues, echoing louder than any speech, reminding America that truth, when spoken through humor, can never be canceled.